say. To say. To say. I meant to say. Stuck inside myself, broken down in every single way. For the things I said, was trying to get in your head all alone. So can we talk about it? You didn't have to walk away. I think about you every day. I was wrong.
to me. Give me the impression that I won't scratch your surface. And I could walk for days, searching for your praise. But is it even there to find? Is there a chance for me to learn your memories? Will I slowly lose my mind?
guess you're back. Are you gonna tell me where you went? All the messages I sent with no reply. it's like that. You're just gonna walk into my room. I hate how you assume there will always be a place for you. By my side, day or night. You know that it's killing me. Why do you always leave? It's not right. We don't fight, but I know what you've been through. It's not right. We don't fight, but I know what you've been through. I'll take the pleasure and the pain, sorrows in your brain, 'cause I know you're on the run. I'll take the pleasure and the pain, your secrets to my grave, 'cause you are the only one. By my side, day or night. You know that it's killing me. Why do you always leave? It's not right. We don't fight, but I know what you've been through. I'll take the pleasure and the pain, the sorrows in your brain, 'cause I know you're on the run. I'll take the pleasure and the pain, your secrets to my grave, 'cause you are the only one.
All right. any one person to access our treasure or our gold. So for example, you had Byzantine monks that distributed keys amongst themselves, and no one monk can actually steal the funds from them. When it comes to Bitcoin, it's the same principle. So here in this image, we see the Bitcoin having 3 keys. So in this example, it's a 2 out of 3. It's just a M of N signature scheme. So currently we can have up to 15 people or 15 signers, of which you can determine any number, well, between 1 and 15 that are required to actually move funds around. With Schnorr, that number of signers is like nearly limitless, but for the time being, it's up to 15. Most common setup is a 2 out of 3, so you need actually 2 signing authorities out of 3 that are available in order to move funds. It's also known as a multisig pay-to-script hash. So these are addresses that start with the number 3, so you can recognize them actually. And yeah, you just need a threshold, so number of signers and number of signees, and 1 XPub per cosigner, and that's what's the basics for generating your multisig address.
So what's an XPub?
XPub is short for extended public key. Okay. So it's after your once your private key is, or your master private key is generated, you have, Maciek, when you show like a diagram, you have like a generation schematic. So the extended public key is, the master public key is derived from the private key, from which you can derive individual Bitcoin addresses.
So what would be the purpose of having multi-signature? This is for like multiple users?
Yeah, we're getting to that. So why use multisig? Several reasons. One is like you want to split up responsibility of the funds, right? So let's say you're a board of directors, or you're a company, or you're a group of friends that have a betting pool, and you don't want any one person to take the funds away. Well, you divide that responsibility and you say, okay, out of the 10 of us, we require a quorum of 8 people to approve any transaction. Another reason why people will use multisig is to avoid a single point of failure. Because again, in the example where you need 2 out of 3 signers to move funds, if you lose one of your devices or one of your private keys, you can still recover because you have still 2 remaining devices or private keys that can be used to sign. If you lose 2 keys out of the 3, well, funds are lost obviously, but that's it. It's important when it comes to distributing your setup, making sure that if something happens in one location, if your house burns down for any reason, or I don't know, you have a boating accident and you lose a key, well, at least you can still recuperate your funds. It's not the end of the world. And yeah, like I mentioned, it's to have a backup, because losing Bitcoin is a terrible feeling. Another reason would be, well, we also see a trend in people, like based on this chart that I got from Unchained Cap, you can look it up, it's called HODL wave, HODL waves. Over 50% of, or nearly 50% of users or addresses have been holding Bitcoin for at least 1 year. So having a solid method of just keeping your funds safe and away from danger, it grows in importance over time, because there is a noticeable trend of people that just want to hold on to their funds. Having one single key and just writing the 24 words on a piece of paper is you're limited in the privacy, in the security that provides. So multisig is definitely an option for those that want to hold on to funds for the long term. Then again, it does have its own trade-offs. Like multisig, you need to understand what kind. If the situation you find yourself in is actually a good one in which you want to have several keys, because there are other alternatives, but I'll get into that shortly. So some of the current tools, you have Spectre Wallet, then there's Dux Reserve, Electrum, and Blue Wallet. Some of them are just coordinators. That means that the software is capable of collecting the XPubs from different keys, putting them together, and creating your multi-signature scheme. Whereas others can do that as well as generate the private key itself, like Blue Wallet, for instance. And then you also have other services such as Unchained Capital and Casa, which is like an assisted multisig. So they would hold onto one key in case, well, they're one of the holders of the key. You have the two others. But Unchained also has a coordinator software that they released called Caravan. So you can use that as well, and you upload your XPubs onto it, and it'll create that multisig scheme for you. So, like I said, multisig, you need to be careful because it's not the easiest thing to get around to doing, especially if you don't take the time to learn the steps. So, one common error that I see is you don't distribute your keys. People will have a tendency of doing their setup in the same location. They'll generate all three keys, and then they're like, okay, I'm done. I moved my funds to it. It's safe. But then, like, they'll put let's say their three cold cards or ledgers or treasures in the same drawer. So it kind of defeats the purpose of this whole setup, right? Another issue is you over-complexify. Because most of the time it's not the device or the signature scheme itself that is the issue, it's us. So like you'll have one key with a passphrase, so you need to record a passphrase. You'll have another key, you'll use seed XOR, so you need to have those two backups as well. And then you'll have another key that, I don't know, you'll have a different passphrase, or you'll try and or you'll have an encrypted backup of it. So you need to have a copy of that decryption key. And then now you have to hold on to like 10 different things in 10 different locations. And then you need to remember that each of those locations. So like we're human, right? We're fallible. So it's better to keep things as simple as we can. We also need to have an understanding of what our situation is. Are you going to have a multi-sig setup, and do you have several locations to keep each backup of that multi-signature scheme? If you don't, you should consider other options as well. Another issue is you didn't record the co-signer. XFP is like the device fingerprint if you're doing it with a cold card. The XPubs, the derivation path, and the address type, because just having the 24-word seed is not always enough. It's you need this additional information to be able to regenerate that new wallet if ever you're recovering it. Or you hide things too well. That's another big problem. For example, I went away for several months. I had my device in one location and my backup in another. I found my backup. I didn't find my device because I know it's in my house. I just don't know where. Because, I don't know. Yeah, I'm like, this is a really good hiding spot, and it was just too good. But, like, again, like, I know how to build multi-sigs and whatnot, but I mean, I'm still human, right? Yeah, so I can give a few more details on the cold card, since that's what we saw before. The cold card you can create a single M of 15 signing wallet, or you can have up to 8 M of 3 wallets per device. Because the device is limited in the hardware that it's used, that's the purpose. It doesn't want to have too much. So there is a limited encrypted memory, which is why there are limitations on the number of multisigs you can create per device. And yeah, that's pretty much it. When you want to generate your multisig with a cold card, yeah, actually another thing, when it comes to over-complexifying, some people think, okay, I'll use 3 different hardware devices in case there's like a risk with an individual manufacturer. But like doing that is quite difficult. I mean, there are solutions that actually improve that solution. I'm sure Thibaud can talk about it, but that is just another situation in which you can make a mistake because it's not that easy to do. But anyways, you have devices such as the cold card that, I mean, using 3 cold cards is quite safe already because it has other risk mitigating factors such as you can detect whether your device has been physically breached, or there's like triggers such as the lights, the anti-phishing words and whatnot that are there to warn you if anything has happened with your setup. Another thing is, yeah, I didn't mention you don't do checkups. So yeah, it's important to distribute your 3 keys if you have 3. But make sure they're still there every once in a while, because that's either means that, okay, something happened to the location or someone actually found the device, so your funds can be at risk. So it's important to like not just to set it and forget it, but like every, I don't know, 6 months or so, you actually make sure that everything is still there and that your backups are still there. You can even take the time to do any upgrades if necessary.
Question?
Yeah?
I wish I would have remembered to ask Rodolfo, but have you heard about cases where you don't power on a cold card for a very long amount of time, or a Ledger Nano S, and it's like wiped out, the information on it?
Like it just doesn't turn on?
No, it turns on, but like it's like the information that was saved on it is erased. Because I don't know, I'm pretty sure I've seen it with my Ledger Nano S, where I plug it after like a couple years, and it's like there's nothing on it. I have to like restart it, like reset it, restore my seed onto it.
I'm not too familiar with that case, but I'd expect like your cold card device to be good for that if it's stored in like like an ideal location, like it's not wet or humid, or it's not too extreme, like it's not freezing either. Another thing I'd mention also is, because multisig is important for also like threat mitigation to yourself. So if someone shows up at your house with a $5 wrench, they can't take your funds because, again, you have 3 devices, for example, and they're each in different locations. And like Rodolfo mentioned also, like the attacker is racing against time to try and steal from you as quickly as possible. So you don't want to have a location that's in your house, another location that is like in your basement, and another location that, like ideally, like we have assisted some people that it can take 24 hours to access the second location because they'll distribute it on several continents. But I mean, that's not always the case for everybody. You can have one at your home, one at your office, and one at your cabin in the woods, for example, or in your safety deposit box. But the idea is really just to set off alarms. Like if someone is trying to steal your Bitcoin, that's their initial plan, but now they have to actually kidnap you. Like that can put things into perspective for them if they aren't aware of your setup. So yeah, it's also a way to mitigate those kind of threats. Yes?
Is there any advantage to waiting for app reactivation on that, or will it reduce complexity of the mistake?
I can't address whether it'll be more or less complicated, but actually the advantages that it'll bring is, like earlier I mentioned that a multisig address begins with a 3. And you can actually, in the Bitcoin script, see that a certain transaction came from a multisig wallet, but with Schnorr and Taproot, you won't be able to distinguish a multisignature transaction from a regular one. So you do have a much greater improvement on when it comes to privacy. And also on the number of signers. Like right now it's limited to 15, but you'll be able to increase that to whichever number you like. Or Thibaud's on the call. Okay, I'll take one more question and.
I just wanted to reply to what you said.
Okay.
Just to add to what you said.
Yeah, please.
From what I read, it also said that with the Schnorr signature, because it will, you don't need, it counts as one signature instead of say 15.
Right.
The data will go down, so fees will drop.
Exactly.
You get more transactions per block.
Yeah, thank you for that. All right, so.
And the multi-sig, is that only for the cold card or that was for
No, you can do a multisig with any device out there, or almost, yeah, pretty much all devices out there. We just do it with the cold card because, again, if you're gonna do a multisig, it's because you're already at that level in that you're taking your security really seriously, so might as well have the added benefit of it being air gapped, like your device is never connected online. You just want to reduce, like you want to reduce the threats as much as possible, so might as well go all the way. All right, we're gonna.
This concept exists within the Bitcoin protocols. It's like just a functionality of Bitcoin itself. So it's a concept.
All right, so Thibaud is on the line. We'll welcome him to the group. Salut Thibaud, how's it going?
Salut Tristan, est-ce que tu m'entends?
Yes, all good. Welcome, man. Thanks for being here.
Great. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, wish you were in Montreal with us, but
I wish I were with you guys as well. Yeah, maybe soon.
yeah,
Or we'll meet up again in Miami or some other places. Who knows?
Oh yeah, that would be very fun too. All right, man. So you mind can you talk to us about the project you've been working on and how it ties in with multisigs?
Sure thing. Yeah, I've made some slides as well.
Yeah, sweet.
I'll just share my screen and host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you guys let me in?
Yeah. Can you unlock it? Yeah, thank you.
But regardless, yeah, I can give a little bit of a background around Dux. So it was the project was started in 2020, in the summer, fall of 2020, so close to a year ago. And it was me, Alex Castelnine, who we've been basically chatting for a few years about multisig and sort of how to go about storing your Bitcoin as NGU technology does its thing. And over the years, we've seen a bunch of different platforms and tools sort of emerge to help users like us store our BTC beyond just using a single hardware wallet. And realized that there were a bunch of really good alternatives, Spectre Wallet, Sparrow, to name a few, but that a bunch of user interfaces and tools were still pretty tailored towards power users and technical folks. And so we wanted to find a way for ourselves really and our family and friends to have a more easy, more accessible way to manage their Bitcoin holdings securely, independently, and without too much complexity. And so that's why we decided to build Dux Reserve, which is a free and open source Bitcoin key manager. So you can create multi-sig vaults. Right now it's very, we really narrowed the scope to make it, again, dead simple, and yet have the added benefit of multi-signature.
Very cool, man. Yeah, we played around with it a little bit. We saw the alpha release. I think you should be good to go to share your screen.
Yeah. All right. Tech.
Nice.
Okay. Can you see it now? Yeah. Perfect. So yeah, really the goal behind Dux was to make multisig for everyone, keeping it really simple, yet having that added benefit of the security of multisig. As everybody knows in this conference around the Verify folks and the Bull Bitcoin guys, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. That's pretty obvious. So it's great, right? Because it means that as a user, you're in control, but you're on your own sometimes, right? And so oftentimes you're going to see users with single signature hardware wallets, and they're great. 90%, perhaps 95% plus of users are highly satisfied with this, and this is good. However, as the number go up and you sort of have more accumulated wealth on that, you sort of realize that maybe it's too much for a single hardware device, right? So that's my pitch for the multi-sig. I'm not going to go into too many details on that because I believe Tristan, you did the whole overview. But quickly, you know, as a user, you can decide to add a passphrase to your single sig seed. But the thing is, the passphrase introduces single point of failures. And so the issue with this is that it makes recovery a bit complicated, especially if you have inheritance planning in mind. So may not be the right setup for you. And so again, this is where multi-signature can be really efficient, can help you sort of build a security model that allows you to sort of skip that single point of failure. And so the thing is, as I mentioned to you guys, it can be tough to get started, right? It adds complexity. It is still a bit intimidating to the user. The tools are a bit, the interfaces and the user experience are still a bit clunky for some. Some others are doing a really good job, like Casa, like Unchained Capital. Like there's a lot of really good alternatives that are emerging, but still it's early days. And so that's what we built, Dux. I would say a final note here before I go into a quick demo is that right now the tool is, so it's free, it's open source. You can actually go and verify the code base on GitHub, as you know, any sort of multi-signature product should be doing. And you can do it today. You can use this product from the comfort of your desktop app, and it's compatible with Coldcard, Trezor, and Ledger at the moment. We're looking to add other devices, but at the moment this is what we decided to focus on, as they're the most popular devices out there. So this is Dux, the main dashboard. I'll show you how we get there in a moment. And so again, as a user, you can decide to basically start with single signature or multi-sig right away. Really is up to the user. So you upload a configuration with the wallets that I mentioned, right? Trezor, Ledger, and Coldcard, or just a single signature configuration, and then actually start using the product. So I'm going to run you through a quick overview of how to create a 2 of 3 multi-signature vault. It is not a live demo because, you know, live demos, oftentimes with the lags and all that, I didn't want to do the sort of live demo thing. So I just did it with screen captures, but you guys feel free to go on our GitHub, download the executables over there. You can verify them, of course, or build from source. Really is up to you. And actually follow through the demo this way. So as a user on Dux, the main screen is presenting you with an option to pick a single signature wallet or a multiple signature vault. And so this screen, of course, is on the multi-signature vault option. We have different quorums. Of course, the most popular ones are 2 of 3 or 3 of 5, meaning that you only need 2 keys out of 3 or 3 keys out of 5 to withdraw from those vaults. And right now we only enable 2 of 3 because it is the most simple quorum. It gives you a ton of benefits from multisig that you don't have with a single hardware wallet, and we believe it's still quite manageable. Whereas the 3 of 5, like unless you're a sophisticated user or you have an organization with different people who want to manage the keys, including, for instance, a notary or a lawyer or some other members of your family, or people in a business, for an individual, 2 of 3 is really is good enough. And so on the interface, you can basically start adding your first hardware device. It's pretty simple. So you plug in here your Trezor. It's going to be essentially scanning for your device. Once the scan is done, it'll ask you for a PIN. You enter it, and then boom, the device is added right away. So it's very, very smooth the way we sort of made the step to link a hardware device to a multi-sig vault. And of course, in the back end, as most of you will know, it extracts the extended public key, so the XPub, and sort of keeps it local on the application until all the XPubs are, of course, brought together and the vault is constructed. So then, as a user, repeat step 2 and step 3. And so, there we have Trezor, a cold card, and a ledger all together, assembled around a Bitcoin vault. And so as the user, you can confirm your vault. And at this phase of the software, your vault is constructed. And of course, this is where a critical step is coming, is where the configuration file needs to be extracted and saved. So we actually prompt the user to download that configuration file and actually store it in a safe place. So as a quick reminder, configuration file is basically, it explains where to find your Bitcoin in a way. It has all the XPubs and the derivation path in like technical terms, and allows a user to basically, or anybody who has access to this file, to view balances of the wallet and the whole transaction history. So it is not a critical component. If you lose it, like you won't lose your Bitcoin. Someone won't be able to steal the Bitcoin from you using that file, but it is a very important file to store. If ever you want to recover, let's say your Bitcoin from that vault, and you only have 2 keys, let's say, out of 3. You will need basically all the public keys, all the extended public keys. And so that file has that. And so here, essentially, at that step, we really force, in a way, the user to extract the file and make sure that they really store it in a safe place. And so then you can view your balances, right? Once your vault is set up, you can launch the app, view the balances, see all the transaction histories. So of course it's available today on mainnet and testnet. You can have your holdings denominated in sats or in BTC. That's really is up to you. You can deposit Bitcoin, right? So we show a simple QR code or address. You can copy paste it. Really is up to you. Here, a cool feature that we haven't released yet as a full check is the key health check on the top right side. So it allows a user to verify if the key is still in good shape and still able to sign withdrawals from this vault. So here you see it's 5-month-old check. So it's, some would say it's a bad health. Some would say it's fine. I don't think there's any sort of golden rule, but the sort of rule of thumb would be to do health checks on a regular basis to make sure that you still can sign on withdrawals with the keys that you store. And then of course we can withdraw from that vault, right? So the withdrawal really is you construct the withdrawal, then you review, and then sign transaction where you actually check the destination address and the amount, network fees, like all of these are standard parameters that any Bitcoin wallet will show you. And then you can proceed towards signing. And so the signing is where you're going to be applying in that quorum 2 signatures out of 3. So it can really be any hardware device from that quorum. The order doesn't matter either. And the way you use your hardware devices to sign doesn't matter as well. Meaning that if you want to use your cold card in an air-gapped manner using a micro SD card, you can do that as well, which is pretty cool. Like I personally use Dux with 3 cold cards with micro SDs. So it's 100% offline air-gapped key storage. And that way, you have a good security, but at the same time, still a pretty usable user experience. And so here it really is similar to adding a key, right? So here I decided to sign with my cold card. So either I plug it in or I use the micro SD, and it'll essentially ask my cold card to confirm that this transaction is legit. So I verify everything on my cold card. Make sure that it sort of matches the details that I want it to match, and then proceed to signing. So here, we're seeing a quick load. Signature was added. I can unplug my device, and then signature fully applied. Proceed to doing the second step with the second order device, and then done, right? So at this point, I'm actually missing a step here, so sorry about this. There should be a screen where we actually tell the user that now their transaction is fully signed. So as the transaction lifecycle goes, it's kind of the last step before you either broadcast the fully signed transaction to the network or just delete it. And I also tell the user that there is at this time a privacy trade-off. So we actually are using Blockstream's API. So we're using their full node to broadcast the transaction to the Bitcoin network. We're planning on allowing users to connect their own nodes, but at the moment it is sort of a little disclaimer that we have at this step. And if the user is okay with it, they'll just broadcast it via this method. So that sort of covers the demo. I made it pretty quick so that we could have more time to discuss features and sort of limitations and all that. So for instance, I mentioned the full node, like thereof. Same for coin control. So UTXO management is still very limited on the application. We plan on allowing users to basically select whatever coin they want to spend and have sort of more discretionary power on this. So it's going to come in a little while. No clear timeline on this. As I mentioned, we only have 3 hardware devices right now. The Bitbox 02 is high in the list. Other ones as well. Like constantly get users asking for it, so we'll add it soon, 2 weeks. And also, it's still in beta, right? It's still a software that is in beta. So we released it the first time. It was in April. It is being, of course, worked on. It is being tested. So it's not fully stable yet, right? We have some bugs, of course. So this is where we still recommend users to use it with small amounts of BTC or use it on testnet, or if they want to use it with their main holdings, that they sort of do comparisons with other wallet multisig coordinators like Sparrow Wallet, right? So for instance, if you sort of create a vault on Dux, with the same keys, you can recreate that same vault on another wallet like Sparrow and actually compare receiving addresses and such, so that you know that there are the same standards applied in terms of derivation, and that there's no lock-in basically. We plan on adding sort of a parser, sort of allowing a bit more interoperability between our software and other tools, so that, for instance, you could say create a vault on Dux, and then if you want to test this vault in another software like Spectre or Sparrow or with Unchained or whatever, you can essentially export that vault in a compatible format and then re-upload it in another software, so that there's literally zero lock-in as a user, which is the beauty of Bitcoin and multi-signature and PSBT, partially signed Bitcoin transaction in that context. And then, I guess really sort of Dux, for us, it introduces the notion of multi-signature acting as a platform. Like if you think of Bitcoiners or as sovereign individuals who don't want to get locked in, who will travel the world to escape, different jurisdictional limitations that they may have in these days, or just chasing nice weather, escaping the hard, cold winters in Montreal. You want to get products and financial services for Bitcoin that sort of empower those individuals, those sovereign individuals. And really, multisig with Bitcoin is a great platform for this, because you can build a whole bunch of other services, financial services, on top of it. Like the obvious one, of course, is, well, if you have your vault, and your vault, lives on your desktop app, and you have your hardware devices that you're taking with you or that you're storing in different bank vaults, for instance, well, you want to be able to stack sats directly into that vault, right? Directly in cold storage. Or you may want to plan some inheritance with your family or and loved ones. Or finally, sort of as some providers are doing these days, like Unchained Capital, for instance, use Bitcoin as a collateral for cash loans, but also making sure that you can, you still have that control, or that you're over the collateral, and that your Bitcoin is not being lent out to other speculators in the market. So basically, there's a bunch of ideas that, of financial services that can be integrated on multisig. And so that's why we're super excited about Dux and about the potential of multisig. And so, yeah, merging really good user experience with those services could make it for a really good and valuable product for Bitcoiners in the long term. So that's, yeah, essentially who we are, what we do as a company. We like to call ourselves a Bitcoin neobank. Right now, we registered in France with the AMF, which is the local regulators, the same name as the Quebec one. And really, our goal is to help French people these days turn their savings into Bitcoin. And as everybody knows here, you know, euro and fiat currencies, they're all crashing and bad store of values, and Bitcoin is great. So we really want to help anybody really sort of be able to acquire that great store of value and also secure it for the long term. Because once you buy it, it's a great thing, but you also want to be able to secure it in a simple and lasting way. So that's it for this short overview. We have a wait list these days. I'm doing a little self-promotion shill here. For any French person who's interested in this, get on our website, app.duxreserve.com. We're giving away free Bitcoin for users who register and invite their friends at the launch of our mobile application to purchase Bitcoin. And that is planned to be in the fall of 2021, if all goes well. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to really chat about the product, hear your thoughts on features, on limitations or ideas that you may have. Yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Thibaud. Really an amazing product you got there, and I wish you and your team best of luck in expanding and making it and bringing on improvements, man. It's a really cool thing you're working on.
What is the final? It's a beta version, so.
Yeah, it's a beta.
What's the date? Yeah.
Do you have an estimate for an official launch or a product?
Well, so these days it is live. You can test it out of beta. If you want an estimate, it's hard to say. To be frank, I don't want to sort of overpromise on the timeline and not respect it. We're aiming at sort of a V1, right, in early 2022. We want to take our time. Like this multi-signature product needs to be done well and needs to be stable. So we'll give it the time it needs to mature.
Sweet.
Thibaud, hi, it's Maciek here. Hope you're doing well.
Hey, Maciek.
Yeah. Could you explain to the users why would someone want to use different kinds of hardware wallets to do a multisig instead of using just one model? So personally, I like to just use cold cards, but can you explain why would that matter for somebody?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's the sort of the rationale behind this is you don't want to put all your eggs in the same basket. And say you're having a multi-signature vault with only one hardware wallet provider. Theoretically and pragmatically speaking, you're exposing yourself to that manufacturer. And so if that manufacturer has an issue with their software or their hardware, or there's any kind of supply chain related attacks, you may have your risk concentrated on one single entity, which is not the most optimal setup, right? And so if you're using two providers, then all of a sudden you've split your risk with two different sets of supply chains, perhaps sometimes different hardware components, and also different, customer support teams. Like there's a whole, basically everything related to that particular hardware device, right? And if you have three different ones and a 2 of 3 multi-signature product, some people would say it's even better. Now, I guess there's a trade-off to this, because there's always trade-offs in security. And the main trade-off here is that you're adding a little bit of complexity, because these days hardware wallets don't have the same standards when they interact with multi-signature vaults. For instance, Ledger is, I've used Ledger as an example in my presentation. It is a good hardware wallet. It's perhaps one of the most popular ones, but it's not optimized these days for multi-signature, meaning that it doesn't verify change addresses when you withdraw from that wallet, from your multi-signature vault. And so it can sort of lead to, again, like theoretical attacks, ransom attacks, where, for instance, your ledger could be signing on a transaction that would bring your change back to you, but in a different place that your vault is expecting, and basically would make it really hard for the user to ever find that Bitcoin again. So I don't want to get too much into the details of that, but it's sort of a trade-off, basically, that you need to remember, is that there's no standard right now for hardware wallet makers to sort of sign on multi-signature vaults. There are, of course, some standards. I shouldn't say there's no standards, but they're not deployed by all these hardware makers in the same capacity.
Got another question in the back.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Thibaud.
Why did you register your company in France?
That's a really good question. So I, as some of you may know, I've spent 9 years in Canada, in Montreal. Came back to France from, so I'm originally from France. So came back to France last summer for holiday reasons at first, then COVID-related reasons, and love-related reasons. And so essentially, we registered the company in France because we wanted to launch a European wide business, and France have a really solid and a very well-defined regulatory environment when it comes to Bitcoin. Some Bitcoiners, would be against sort of any type of regulatory regime, and I can appreciate that. But for us, we took the sort of pragmatic approach and decided to favor sort of stability, so like predictability, making sure that we knew really well what were the rules in that jurisdiction, so that we could build a business there. And then the hypothesis is that this regulation anyway is going to spread across Europe, and they want to sort of uniformize all of that. And France is sort of the first step, the first influence, I would say, for the European regulation. So for us, it was a strategic decision, and perhaps a little bit of a bet as well, because France is not really friendly on taxes, for instance. But for that reason, it is an interesting one. So we'll see if it bears fruits.
Nice. Got a question for you, Thibaud.
Hey, I wanted to ask you a little bit of a technical question, but it's a simple one. The config file that you save on your software to rebuild the multisig, is that compatible with other wallet, softwares, like similar software like that, like Sparrow or whatever?
So the short answer is right now, no, out of the box. You can read the config file and sort of make adjustments to sort of import those parameters in a Sparrow or in a Spectre. But right now, no. We want to do sort of special exports where you can have a Sparrow format export on Dux, and it sort of reformats the config file, especially for Sparrow, and same thing for Spectre. We're not there yet, but that's the goal.
Thanks.
Thibaud, I have a question regarding the Bitcoin community in France and more like the general perception of Bitcoin from French people. Is it like similar to here? What are your impression about Bitcoin adoption in France in general? And,
yeah, it's a good question. I think Canadians, well, from what I've seen, like Bitcoin a bit more than French people. I think there are more stackers in Canada than in France at the moment, or at least they're a bit more vocal. In France, there's a growing sense of Bitcoin being adopted and being purchased by French people. I think there's still a very popular narrative around Bitcoin being seen as a speculative asset rather than a long-term savings plan. And I think the narrative is there is a narrative around Bitcoin as a savings vehicle. It is sort of shifting a bit, but still early days. In terms of entrepreneurs, makers, companies, like there's a solid scene, I would say. Paris, of course, has a bunch of entrepreneurs over there. You have the guys that one of the main implementations of Lightning was built over there, like the Eclair team. There are other businesses sort of spread, I would say, in different cities in France. I'm in the south of France, for instance. Bitcoin is unfortunately sort of mixed in a sea of shitcoinery. Because again, it's seen as a speculative asset, so there's a lot of distraction around that, and hopefully, events like the ones that you organize and other local meetups and companies that are building Bitcoin-only products will sort of help shift that narrative.
thank you.
Tough to beat Montreal.
Tough to beat Montreal, man. The toxic scene in Montreal is pretty special.
So another question I had is, we talked earlier about seed XOR. So what would be the advantage of using like seed XOR versus multisig?
So I haven't used seed XOR, and I wouldn't be able to speak about it. But from what I've heard, it's more of you're combining different seeds into one sort of master seed, right? So it's more at the backup layer. Whereas so you basically have different backups that combined together would give you back your wallet, which still is a single key. While with Dux and multisignature, you have different keys, right, that you need to put together to sign a valid withdrawal, and each of these keys are backed up on their own with their own seed, right? Their own recovery material, whether you store it on paper or metal, that's up to you. But so you have these different pieces of information. So I would say, and guys, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Tristan, Gustavo, Marechal. I would say there's a bit more redundancy for multi-signature because you have different keys at the key layer, and you have different backups at the backup layer. Whereas for seed XOR, you have multiple backups, but they all link to the same key.
So if I can add on, so seed XOR, it's the convenience of signing with one key, but you're splitting your main seed into two parts, and they both look like different seed backups. Whereas, like Thibaud said, multisig, you'll have multiple seeds that are used to sign. But it's a trade-off. So it's either redundancy in your backups or distributed keys, or you distribute a backup of a single key.
Yeah, and if I could jump on this as well, like there's always trade-offs. Like the more security or redundancy you add, the more complexity also you're adding. And as most of you would know, like complexity is sort of the enemy of security. So you want to make sure that you're not adding too much complexity. And perhaps a seed XOR would be good enough, right, for you at the beginning, before actually having different keys to sign withdrawals from your wallets, for instance.
Can you have like a multi-sig you split it in 3 different devices, but all 3 devices would have the same public addresses information, is that it? Or each device would be having their own?
Yeah, so each device can work independently from one another, but the goal in the multisig is to create a new wallet combining those 3 XPubs and like the conditions for signing. So essentially you're creating a new wallet, but it has, let's say, a set of 3 private keys that you need to preserve. And you need, for instance, 2 out of those 3 to recover your funds from that multisig wallet. But it's not the same set of XPubs that's repeated. It's individual ones that are put together to create like this schematic. Yeah, answer that. Yeah, we've got another question.
Yes. Thibaud, I'd really like you to, I'm interested in you elaborating on Dux Reserve specifically and the branding that you've brought with this product, because I find it interesting, and I'm really curious in the term neobank and why you bring that forward in your branding, as well as maybe the Dux Reserve, the name also. Personally, just curious to find out, but if you could elaborate on that whole subject, talk a bit more about the, I guess, patriotic feel of Dux Reserve, perhaps.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So as you've seen, the branding is really on the French patriotic sort of pride. There is I would say, so the team at Dux is so we're 3 people, and we have a 4th person helping us also on the side. And I would say the everybody sort of working on Dux is really sort of excited about Bitcoin and the liberty that it brings in the world, that it brings to individuals. And so we're really strong on that ethos of sovereignty and self-responsibility. So yeah, the branding really is geared towards that, like trying to build a brand around those values. These are the values that Bitcoin preaches anyway, because like if you're not a responsible individual with your Bitcoin private keys, well, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot, right? So this is really the why we're excited about pushing Dux forward. In terms of the name, so a Dux is actually it's a top pupil in a class. It's a really sort of intellectually rigorous, smart student in a class in a university usually. So it's sort of someone who's sort of rigorous and has sort of a scientific methodology applied to his reasoning. And so we thought it was a really cool idea to push forward. And also a Dux is so it's understood as sort of a leader. And in music, it is the sort of the equivalent of the maestro, right? So it's the person who's sort of leading all the instruments to create a melody together. But this person himself or herself is not is not playing any instrument, right, on their own. So that really is we found it was a cool analogy to the coordinator of multi-signature that we built, because we help coordinate keys of our users, but we never actually hold the keys for you, right? You're always in control. So it's sort of you're playing your own instrument, and we sort of like tell you how to play it in a way. So the reserve, it comes from, Liberty Reserve, the Federal Reserve, like all these different reserves that sort of are around money and currencies. And so we thought it was a good sort of reminder to bring that word also in the name of the company. So yeah, that's pretty much why we called it this way. And now I think the third question was around neobank. So right now this product that I've shown you guys is a desktop app. It's not really linked to any sort of direct banking services, but the mobile application that we're building is geared towards that. Like, we want to build basically a Euro current account in the app and a Bitcoin savings account. So as a user, you can use the application to sort of do any sort of regular payments in Euro using this application, and any sort of savings, Bitcoin savings related matters would go in your other account that you would have with us. Whether it be custodial or non-custodial is up to you. We plan to offer both, and that is from a user experience standpoint. But of course, with that key manager that we've developed and shipped before, we want to incentivize users to actually take control of their keys, and actually have say you're buying Bitcoin on the mobile application, and you're getting that Bitcoin delivered right away into your desktop app on your computer, in control of your keys. And so that way, we believe we can really have a good user experience, while still getting all the good stuff around Bitcoin that it enables, right? Meaning that being really in control of your money and being a sovereign, self-sovereign individual, managing all that. And so that's why we called it a neobank, because we believe that a true neobank ought to work on top of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the reserve currency of the global reserve currency of tomorrow. It's being adopted on a massive scale as a reserve currency right now, personally, individually. So yeah, we want to help on-ramp users in that realm.
There. Oh, we got a couple more questions for you.
Thibaud, for the first of classes, they have Dux. Is this working? But for the dropouts, can you tell us if multisig was enabled on Bitcoin Core client, on the Bitcoin Core client, and what are some of the major advantages of using Dux as to having a more simple solution on the Bitcoin Core client using Bitcoin D?
So meaning using Dux instead of using Bitcoin D directly through the client, the core client?
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of the question.
So the question the question was, what are the traders or the differences between just using the Bitcoin client wallet directly to do a multisig instead of a coordinator like yours or any other coordinator? I'm guessing so.
It's a really good question. I mean, the Bitcoin Core wallet and client is really good software. It's much more audited than Dux. It has way more features. So if you're running your own client, you're probably better off using Bitcoin Core, because it's going to have much more features, and and really give you all like way more stuff around the Bitcoin protocol. Now, I would say, again, trade-off here is on usability, right? If you're a power user and you have the skills, time, or interest to actually use Bitcoin Core, run your client and use it directly, like in the way that you explained, then do it, right? Or if you want to use even a multi-sig coordinator that gives you a sort of an easier user experience, but still has a ton of features, I would recommend, for instance, to use Sparrow Wallet or Spectre Wallet. And also these are really good because they allow you to connect to your own full node. Dux is positioned on the sort of the other end of that spectrum, making multisig way easier. So I would argue personally that it's easier to use Dux than use a Sparrow Wallet, but it comes at a cost of lower feature set. So it's always a question of trade-offs and personal preferences.
Okay. Thank you, Thibaud. I think we have one more question for you. Or
sure.
Got a couple more.
Yeah, just a general security question for anybody, whether you're using Dux or CDXOR or multisig or nothing. You've got hardware devices in different locations. You have your seed words in different locations. And I know where everything is. My wife knows where some of it is. That's a joke, but what happens, plane crash and I'm gone, knock on wood. Like, is there any recommendations on, you got to get the information to who you want your heirs or who you want to have your Bitcoin? Mm-hmm. Any recommendations on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really hard question to answer. And I mean, like, I've been digging into that for the last few years for myself personally. It's still very early days, inheritance planning for Bitcoin. Multi-signature, truly believe it is the enabler of that. Like if your CDXOR, for instance, maybe great for this, but I think multi-signature gives you way more flexibility. So the thing is, the more documented your setup is, the broader your attack surface can become. Because if, let's say, you're explaining in a really well documented way how your Bitcoin is stored, where the keys are, how to get those pins and put the keys together to do a valid withdrawal, that the person finding this could actually just follow do a simple treasure hunt, follow the map and grab the BTC, right? So I would say it's a mix of documenting your setup and finding safe places where you can store your different key backups in a way that would require sort of strong authentication in a way. So for instance, like ironically, funny enough, like a bank vault can be a good place for a key backup. But then again, like, you may not want to store all your key backups in a single bank vault, or even let alone in a single bank. You may want to be getting different banks to store different key backups. And then you're saying, well, maybe that's going to be too complicated or too costly, right? And for some users, yes. For others who are storing, let's say, $500,000 or $5 million, or even like $100,000, maybe it's 100% worth it, right? So really depends on your preferences. I would say a good solid advice that I would have also is to be surrounded by a sort of a Bitcoin expert services like the Verify guys, really, where they are there to help you or your family recover. Let's say if the worst thing were to happen to you and you die in a plane crash, and I of course wish that to nobody. But life happens, and even if it's well documented, your setup, and your family is not they're not necessarily engineer, but they sort of know how to manage computers. It may be good to have someone assist them in the recovery so that everything goes smoothly and there's no added stress in that period of terrific drama already, right? That's the best piece of advice I could have is really being surrounded by a trusted person or company and make sure that they're there just in case.
Thank you.
I hope it answers your question more or less.
Yeah, thank you, Thibaud, for talking about that. Actually, some of our clients actually put us in their will as technical support. Yeah. So it's kind of, I think that's going to be a big business opportunities in the upcoming years in Bitcoin in general. There's tons of idea that can be explored, not just like consulting, but also products that may help lawyers or to make that more easy.
Yeah, and it's important also, like Thibaud said, have proper documentation, but don't keep it all in one place. For instance, your notary that helps you write your will have a sealed envelope that will reveal partial secrets or, let's say, the location of a secret key. And yeah, bank vaults are practical because only you can access it, or at the time you pass away, like your notary will. So it's important to also distribute like that documentation, to break it up and distribute it. There's no like one size fits all solution, but yeah, it's definitely worth thinking about.
Thibaud, do you have more time for questions or?
One more question?
One more question.
Sure, yeah, let's do one more.
All right, one more.
Yes, hi. So I have two questions actually. Like one.
I know we said.
Okay. Like for Dux or like for the guys at Verify, like for the multi-sig vault, how do you keep the keys if you have like several clients? Like for example, do you reuse the same keys for several clients, or is that like bad practice? Is there an issue with that? Or, for example, if I want to use my key for like a multi-sig for me and then for like someone in my family, would there be an issue if I use like say my code card for several multi-sigs? Or is there like no problem? Okay,
the only limitation would be, like I mentioned, you can have up to 8. You can use one cold card to create 8 setups of 2 of 3 multi-sig schemes. I mean, it depends on your use case. You can create a multi-sig. Let's say your family has a family savings account and you want to be a co-signer, and then you also have one with, I don't know, your wife and kids, and you want to be a co-signer from that. Definitely possible. But for us, for instance, like each client will have their own setup. So it's really adaptable depending to your needs. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Thibaud.
Oh yeah, 100%. You said it right. It really is based on your needs. Of course, the more you use your key in different vaults, the more concentrated again the risk is on that key, and if you lose it, it's problematic. So you sort of you want to be mindful of this, but at the same time, having too many keys to manage if you're part of a bunch of different quorums can also be tricky. So it's constantly a trade-off. I'm sorry, I don't have sort of the cookie cutter like answer because there's none, right? It really is. You got to basically do your own threat modeling and draw, literally like just go open a notebook and sort of draw like what is the sort of the model that you want to have. How do you want to split risk, who you're dealing with, how much money is involved, and then get it vetted by the Verify guys.
Well put. Yeah. Yeah, we won't hold it. Yeah, for the time being, it's your keys. We're just there to help you make sure you don't make any mistakes along the way. Yeah, anybody else have anything else to say? No? Any closing remarks, Thibaud?
Yeah, I would say don't slack on it. Like if you have Bitcoin on an exchange, for instance, and you know it's been there, and you have $1,000 or $500 or whatever it is, just get that, put it on your mobile wallet or buy a hardware wallet, put it on there, and just do it regularly, right? Test start somewhere. Don't be sort of intimidated by the sort of crazy, complex multi-signature schemes that exist and crazy sort of theoretical attacks, because you're going to go nuts otherwise. So start somewhere where you feel comfortable. Start early and then sort of refine it over time. I think it's the best piece of advice, because if you're reading about it day in, day out, you're always going to see sort of things that won't match your needs exactly, or you think it doesn't really work for you. Yeah, just start day one. It's day one, and then sort of incrementally get better over time.
Wise words. Thank you very much, Thibaud. Really appreciate you having here with us today. Really informative, and I think we all learned a lot with you. So if we can all give a round of applause, and thank you, man.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Sorry?
It was a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Oh, man, thanks
I hope
again.
it was useful for the attendees and everybody in the room. And if you guys want to get in touch, talk about anything, my DMs are open on Twitter. So THIBM_. Feel free to reach out. Happy to discuss about anything really.
Sweet, man. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Salut.
Ciao.
All right. So that concludes this presentation. We'll jump on a quick break. The next one is at 3, I think. Oh, 2:45. Okay, so we have about 25 minutes. We'll just take a quick breather. And yeah, we'll reconvene here at 2:45. 15, yeah. 15 minutes and we'll be back. All right, thank you.
You're back. Are you gonna tell me where you went? All the messages I sent with no reply. It's like that. You're just gonna walk into my room. I hate how you assume there will always be a place for you. By my side, day or night. You know that it's killing me. Why do you always leave? It's not right. We don't fight, but I know what you've been through. fight, but I know what you've been through. I'll take the pleasure and the pain, the sorrows in your brain, 'cause I know you're on the run. I'll take the pleasure and the pain, your secrets to my grave, 'cause you are the only one. By my side, day or night, you know that it's killing me. Why do you always leave? It's not right. We don't fight, but I know what you've been through. I'll take the pleasure and the pain, the sorrows in your brain, 'cause I know you're on the run. I'll take the pleasure and the pain, your secrets to my grave, 'cause you are the only one.
dream about you every night and every day. I know I'm gonna find you on my way. I dream about you every night and every day. And you will be my story, you will be my fairy tale. Kissing under the sky, making a feeling so high until the morning lights in the hot day of July. Kissing under the sky, making a feeling so high until the morning lights. We are a summer day in Dubai, 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 Dubai. When I paint you in my dreams, I'm in love with how it feels. The colors of the fantasy, the colors of you and me. I don't even know your smile, I don't even know your name. All I know is that you'll be my fairy tale. Kissing under the sky, making a feeling so high until the morning lights in the hot day of July. Kissing under the sky, making a feeling so high until the morning lights. We are the summer jam. 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 Kissing under the sky, making a feeling so high until the morning lights in the hot day of July. Kissing under the sky, making a feeling so high until the morning lights. We are the summer till in Dubai, 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 Dubai. And I feel it from my name every time you call my name. And I feel it from my name every time you call my name. Amelia. with me. When I'm with you, you're not show me. You stole my days and nights and my whole life. When I'm with you, you're not show me. You show me. You show me.
Hi everybody, so we're back. I'm going to talk about running a Bitcoin node. Then Matt Hill from Start9 Labs, the CEO of Start9, is going to come in and present his product, which is a Bitcoin node. But I'm going to start with just an introduction on what Bitcoin nodes are and why should you run one. So first of all, we're going to look at some data structures of Bitcoin. I like to start it like that just so that we can understand what we're talking about. Then we're going to talk about your light wallet. You're probably using one if you're not running a node. What are its limitations and risks, and at the end, what is a Bitcoin node? So the Bitcoin data structures is just I'm just doing a little recap. Basically, Bitcoin works as a continuation of blocks that each have like around 1 to 2 megabytes of information, and they are structured in this format. So there's the header and there's all the transactions. Transactions, we saw them yesterday when I was presenting about Wasabi. You got the inputs, which are the coins that are spent, which actually use what are called UTXO, so unspent transaction outputs. So basically the outputs of other previous transactions are spent on a new transaction, and that's called an input. And the output of a transaction is what gets out, which are the coins sent. Obviously, the amount, the address, the script type. Is it a SegWit native? Is it a multisig address as a pay-to-script hash? Is it a now taproot? So that would go on the script type and conditions, but really the script type is often just hidden within the address format. So if you see an address that starts with 3, you know it's a pay-to-script hash address, and there's a script inside, but you don't see the script itself. You just see the address when you send coins to it. So that's basically the side of transactions, but then there's the block header. And the block header has information that depend on the transaction. So for example, the block hash, which is the title of every block, it has encrypted all the information from every transaction. So if you change a transaction, you completely change the block hash. And there's also other things such as the block height, which means what the block number is, the weight, which means basically kind of like the data size it has, but in a little different manner. Then the previous block is also mentioned on the header so that a continuation, a chain of blocks can be established, a blockchain. So this is just a blockchain, so blocks that are following each other. But it's really important to keep in mind that the block hash contains information from every transaction. And if I change any information on any transaction, I'm going to change the block hash, and I'm going to change every block that's going to follow, because the block hash also contains the block hash of the previous block. So it's dependent on the previous block, on the transactions, on the nonce. It's also depending on what the mining algorithm, the answer of the mining question. So it's depending on all that. So let's just keep that in mind, and let's continue with your light wallet. So once you're using a light wallet like Blue Wallet, or even Wasabi wallet that I presented, or like Thibaud was talking about Dux, you cannot use your own node, so you're connecting to a server. You get the bare minimum of data that's shipped to your wallet. So let's say I have a master public key, which is like from my seed phrase, from my 24 words, I get a master public key. Usually they start with xpub or ypub or zpub. And from then I can get a list of addresses. Basically, what my wallet is doing, my little application on my mobile device or desktop device, is just asking a server, hey, can you send me the data of transactions, just the specific transactions that correspond to my address. So for example, if I want to know what transactions I received, I'm going to ask the server, can you send me the list of transactions where the output has my address? So that means that I received funds. And the other way around, if once I've received funds, I want to spend those funds, how do I know which funds do I have? How can I construct the transaction? Well, I take the output and I put it in the input of the new transaction, and that's how I create new transactions. So basically that's what's happening. You're getting the bare minimum of data. You're not getting any block. You're not verifying the block hash. You're not doing anything else. So how do you know whether that data is valid? How do you know whether those transactions are real even? Well, you don't. You just trust a third party. And that's basically what running a light wallet is you have trust in a third party, which creates all sorts of limitations and risk. And here I list the most important ones. The first one being the privacy. So the third party has your data. They know your IP address. They know the list of transactions you have, all the addresses you have. They just know everything. There's an exception, which I was talking about yesterday, Wasabi, because it uses neutrino SPV, which is a way to get a lot of data. Instead of just getting selective data, you get a lot of data. That way, the server cannot know what your addresses really are. And it uses Tor. So there's maybe a fix for light wallets. Wasabi is approved for the privacy side of things. But then there is censorship resistant. And I'm going to tell a story regarding Mycelium iOS. Something that I've seen already twice. It's that Mycelium iOS was a very old wallet. I think it was created in 2013, 2014. And a lot of people used to download it back then. Because the Mycelium Android is pretty good, people got iPhones and they're like, I'll just get the Mycelium iOS. However, they have a massive server connection issue that very often you just log into your wallet and you cannot get your transaction history. You cannot get it because it says server doesn't respond. So that's enough, and you cannot use your wallet, you cannot see how much money you have, you cannot make transactions. You can always grab your seed phrase, put it into another wallet, and get your funds. Like, your funds are not lost, but you get denial of service. You cannot use it. And we've seen it with two of our verified customers, is that they were trying to move their funds from this bad setup to a new multisig setup, and they couldn't because of that. So we had to recover the seed phrase on Electrum and then move it. So in the second case, it was even worse because the person, there was a bug in Mycelium iOS, which made that when he recovered with another wallet, he couldn't find all the coins he had. And that's another topic. It's derivation paths and derivation issues. But it's just to say that censorship resistance is also something that you don't get when you have a light wallet. And third of all is the trust required. And that's the most important one, because it's really the one that there's no exception and you cannot get out of. It's the fact that you don't know whether the new transaction respects the protocol rules or whether it's a real transaction even. Because as you remember, you only get some of the transactions from some of the blocks. So let's say there's 600,000 blocks and you have received transactions 5 times. You're only going to get 5 transactions. You don't know whether those transactions respected the rules. You don't know whether that block respected the rules. You don't know nothing about that. So that's really the limitation that there is at running a light wallet. And that's when a Bitcoin full node comes in. This is just an image we did at Verify a couple years ago. So you get security, privacy, autonomy. In other ways, you get sovereignty. And what is a Bitcoin node? A Bitcoin node is any computer that runs a Bitcoin implementation, a full Bitcoin implementation. So not only a wallet that can construct transactions, but an implementation that is connected to miners, is connected to the peer-to-peer network of nodes. It receives a block. It verifies every signature, every coin, every piece of block, every hash, every nonce, which is the miner response. So it verifies everything about every transaction and every detail of the Bitcoin history. And that's a Bitcoin node. It takes hardware to do it, of course, like for any software, but it's very limited. And it's very, I mean, the other way around. It's very permissive in the sense that you can run it on the cheapest hardware, $100 worth hardware. It's super light as software. It just takes some time because it has to verify for 400 gigabytes of data, which is, let's say, I don't know, 400 movies, 200 movies. It has to download, and it has to just verify every single cryptographic detail and make sure. And if something isn't, this is what's very important as well, is that if something is wrong on the transaction 50 of the block 2, then every block after that is not valid because the hash of the block 2 is dependent on all the transactions being valid, and all these following blocks are dependent on that block. So that's basically what you're doing when you're running a full node, is you're verifying that every piece of history respects the protocol rules. So there's two roles to a Bitcoin node. The first one is the individual benefit it brings to you, such as individual self-verification. Have I received funds authentically? That's the question you ask yourself. Because if you trust in a third party, how do you know it's not within a block that doesn't respect the protocol rules, and in half an hour it's gonna get thrown away by the network? You don't know that. And that's why you do individual certification, so that you know you've received funds in a 100% sure manner. The second role of a node, it's the protocol rules enforcement for blocks mined. So it's, the way I see it and explain it is like a justice court, where it's just, nodes are just like the judges that are on the network verifying the protocol rules, verifying that the miners, which are the ones that propose blocks, have done it correctly. So a lot of people think that miners control the network, when in reality, miners provide the security to the network, they propose an addition to the history, and then it has to be validated. Kind of like politicians or like the military would, and then there would be the judges, which are the nodes, they can have the final word. So here's an example of a few nodes, and we're gonna talk more about Start9 today because the CEO is gonna come in with us in a couple minutes, but there's many commercial Bitcoin nodes. Obviously you can just run Bitcoin Core, bitcoincore.org, or just go on bitcoin.org. You'll get Bitcoin Core, which is the most known software implementation, but a lot of people just wanna have their own dedicated hardware for that, their own node sitting next to the router at home. Then there's Umbrel, which is probably one of the most popular right now, Raspberry Blitz, MyNode, HODL, and Start9. And we're gonna talk about Start9 because it has a lot of developing features and a lot of cypherpunk values inside that node. So last, before switching to Matt or taking questions, these are just two types of nodes you can have, just cool designs that I saw. This is a classic one, which is like a Lightning node. It has a little Raspberry Pi in it, but people are designing new nodes that look like basically Bitcoin ATMs. I thought that was pretty cool. So we're gonna go to Matt in like 5 minutes, but in the meantime, does anybody have any questions?
Gustavo, I think NVK touched on that earlier in the presentation. Like he sort of, what I think I got from his remarks was that a lot of people were running nodes without really understanding, like, you know, what they were doing, why they were doing it. And so, what's your take, or if you could elaborate on what specifically users running a node should be looking for to make it as useful as they can?
Okay, so this is a very good question, because the usefulness of a node is something that a lot of people miss, and a lot of people will also market nodes in a specific way that's just not true. So what you're really looking for is the complete validity that when a transaction is received to an address that you control, so you're getting money, you really want to make sure and you're not going from a lot, you're not going from 0% to 100%. You're maybe going to like 99% to 100%, because chances are, if I'm using a light wallet, and I find it on the Explorer, and I'm using Blue Wallet, and it's on Blockstream Explorer, and it's on every Explorer, chances are the transaction is still legit. Even if I'm not running a node, you're not going from 0 to 100. You're going from like 98% to 100% sure. You can be 100% sure. And then again, there's other ways that couldn't be true if we're talking about like hardware specific details. But if you've installed the software yourself, you can be 100% sure that when you receive a transaction, the block it's included in respects the protocol rules that you define as Bitcoin, which means 21 million Bitcoins. How do you know with 100% certainty that there can only be 21 million Bitcoins, or that the block size of a block doesn't go over 2.4 megabytes. The only way you would really know with 100% assurance is if you run a Bitcoin node for individual self-verification. And that's really what the use case is, not trusting anybody else. But if you want to trust others, like I said, in 99% of situations out of 100, you're going to be okay. But what if there's the one chance that it's not, right? And that has happened before. A clear example is the 2017 block size war, when the big companies wanted to force protocol changes with bypassing the nodes. Basically, a couple miners that were billionaires, a couple company CEOs that were billionaires, from like blockchain, Coinbase, BitPay, they all got together in a hotel room. They decided we're going to change the protocol rules of Bitcoin to make more money, to increase the block size. And that's it. We're going to decide that. So if you were running a BitPay wallet, it was going to go on the new network that had new rules. And you wouldn't have noticed a difference if you were just running the light wallet. But if you were running a node, you would be sure that you're not getting into this new network. Fortunately, it failed because these type of measures, attacks fail. But if it didn't fail, if they went forward with it because they pulled back at the last minute, you would have been protected from being forced to go onto their new network, which is not the real valid Bitcoin network. And curiously, this failed, and that's when the Bitcoin price went to 20,000 on the news that it failed because it proved that the network really works. Is there any other question?
When you say running the node, you're saying downloading the entire blockchain information. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. So like I said, a node is any computer that runs a Bitcoin implementation, such as Bitcoin Core, that has verified all of the blockchain history. So it downloads hundreds of gigabytes of data. It verifies everything. And for it to be really useful for you is that you verify your transactions with it. So let's say, for example, I'm getting some Bitcoin today. I'm buying it from Bull Bitcoin. I'm going to receive it from them. They're going to send it to me. I could receive it on my Blue Wallet, but like just the light wallet version, but I wouldn't be 100% sure that when I receive the transaction, it's respecting the protocol rules I consider Bitcoin to be. So I connect my Blue Wallet to my full node, or I run another wallet that's connected like Bitcoin Core. It has a wallet itself. I run that, and when I receive the coins, I have verified every piece of history from 2009 to today. It's all verified within the protocol rules that I know, and every new piece of data that's added, so the new block, also respects that. So I see it has 1, 2, 3 confirmations. I'm good to go. I can turn off my node. Next time I get a transaction, I'll turn it back on, I'll sync it, I'll verify the transaction, I'll turn it back off. So you don't have to always keep it running. This is something that people say. I don't believe when people say like, do it to protect the network, do it as it's gonna help the network. Like, no, those are like collectivist arguments that aren't very real. The real argument is that it's for your own egoistic interest to run a full node so that you verify your transactions when you receive them, and at that moment you can turn it off and you can switch.
Privacy.
Well, like I said, privacy too, but there's an exception. If you just run Wasabi, you're covered on that privacy front because it uses neutrino, SPV, plus SAR.
So what if, like in your example, you're receiving Bitcoin from Bull Bitcoin, and then it doesn't respect your protocol when you verify it? What happens? What happens if you verified it, and what happens if you didn't verify?
Well, like I said, in 99.9 situations, nothing's gonna happen. It's gonna be the same outcome. But in the very rare, very rare situation, like during the fork wars, maybe I'm not buying from Bull Bitcoin, I'm buying it from Coinbase. And if Coinbase and the other parties that were actively pursuing Segwit2x would have succeeded, then I would have gotten a fake Bitcoin. I would have gotten a Bitcoin that was part of the SegWit2x chain that didn't respect the protocol rules because they already, that was the goal of changing the protocol rules. Bull Bitcoin is my company, as you all know. Well, I'm part of the team, so I trust them. But let's say I was in a scenario where you don't trust necessarily the party you're buying Bitcoin from, and it can come to like a civil war in Bitcoin, a block size war, or a future effort to just change the protocol rules. That's when you really need it, and situations like that. So it's extremely rare. I agree. Exactly. If you, let's say, if something says this transaction, if you're not getting any transactions and the other party is saying, but I sent it, and you're running your own node, and you're getting, it just means that they are in a different blockchain. If they can prove it cryptographically, it just means that they've split the chain because they're in a chain that has new different protocol rules than my node. And my node is not accepting that block because of that. It could mean that, or it could mean that they're just lying. Because nothing stops Blue, any wallet, from saying you've received 1,000 Bitcoins. And if you check your Blue wallet or your BitPay wallet or your Coinbase wallet, nothing stops them from saying you've received 1 million Bitcoins. It's easy as just writing text on the server side of some software. Like it's super easy. So that's also a difference. But they're not gonna lie because of reputation risk. There's explorers, so they're not gonna lie, but they could try to come in doing a like contentious fork and try to create a new chain and take users with them.
It's like a middleman, right?
Excuse me?
It's like a middleman. It's the
Yeah, exactly.
information is downloaded to the node, and then you transact directly with
Exactly.
the node.
It's a middleman. It's there's trust involved.
From a privacy standpoint, what does it offer?
Okay, so this is gonna be the last question because Matt is on the line, but like I said, if you're running Wasabi, you're using Neutrino SPV plus Tor, you are completely covered on the privacy front. But if you're running a node, basically whenever you receive a transaction, you're not asking a third-party server, you're just asking your device that's in your home. So you're not revealing any private information to a third party as you would if you were just using Ledger Live or Blue Wallet by default and things like that. But anyways, Matt is here, so let's go with him. Hi, Matt. Do you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me just okay?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Great. Thanks for having me. Yeah, how's it look on the other side of you in this room? All I can see is you. Is there what size crowd you got there?
We got like 35 people here with us. It's looking good. Bitcoiners here
cool.
that are, I think you can see now a little bit. Bitcoiners here that want to learn more. So yeah, and are here to listen to you.
What's up, everybody? All right, I don't think I'll keep my video on the whole time, but I figured I'd say hi. All right, so that was excellent, first of all. I just listened to your explanation of, the benefits of running a node and also the unlikelihood of exploitation if you don't run a node, at least at the present time. But I think we're living in a time where the concept of tail risk is a little bit more prevalent than it used to be. Like, we understand that just because an oversight or a lack of diligence in the short term does not lead to immediate consequences, the repetition of that error over time tends to build disastrous consequences. And so when people ask us why they should run a node, I give the answer that you did, which is, this is the only way that you know that you have the money that you think you have, that your wallet is telling you the truth. There's a couple other small ones as well. I think you did mention privacy, which is that, you're not broadcasting to the network to somebody else which transactions you're interested in. Obviously, there are ways around that with SPV and Neutrino and whatnot. And then there's also the censorship consideration, which is that if you have a transaction that you would like to get out to the Bitcoin network, your node will never let you down. It'll never tell you no. In all likelihood, there's 1,000 other nodes that would not tell you no either. But again, we're talking about extreme circumstances and tail risk here. So running a Bitcoin node in general, obviously we think is a good idea. It was partially how Start9, the company, was born. More specifically, Start9 came about from the idea of running a Lightning node, which is much more important that you run your own node in Lightning. The privacy and security risk propositions are significantly worse with Lightning as they are with Bitcoin. It's not like some outside chance that something might happen. There's actually a very high probability that something bad will happen to you if you are not running your own Lightning node. So, when I personally went to set up my Lightning node back in the summer of 2019, I was doing it because it was time, right? Lightning was coming on board, and I wanted to set up my node such that Keegan McClelland, who's a partner at Start9, and I could transact. He had set up his Lightning node and was, kind of nudging me to get mine done because I had been, delaying, and finally sat down to do it. And I'm a fairly technical guy. I would say DevOps is not necessarily the top of my skill sets. I'm more of a developer. I don't, have a ton of history working with server infrastructure, Docker containers, and all that. But I can figure it out, right? I can make left from right. And so I sat down to do this and immediately realized that it was going to take me all weekend, at least. And so rather than doing it, the first thing I did was I called Keegan and just said, what the hell? Why is this so hard and necessary, right? It's necessary to run your own node. At least that's the stance that we take. We think that's the best approach to Lightning. But it's really hard. And that's a very bad combination of facts. Necessary and difficult are very bad combinations. So, I started asking questions about what it might take to be able to do a kind of plug and play, spin up with the push of a button Lightning node solution. The best working example in the marketplace at that time was Casa. Casa had a plug and play Bitcoin node, and they had just unleashed, I believe, their plug and play Lightning node along with that. And when we looked at how they were doing it, we had decided that it was a bit, limited and fragile, so to speak. Like it was kind of just, here's your Bitcoin and Lightning node on this device. And there wasn't a lot of modularity or flexibility or scalability into other types of things, including layer 3 solutions for Bitcoin and Lightning. So we started talking a bit abstractly about how we might be able to build an operating system that could generally, in a very modular, extensible, scalable way, run any variety of node, whether it's a layer 1 Bitcoin node, a layer 2 Lightning or Liquid node, or a layer 3, Sphinx type of service. And that conversation got exciting very quickly once we realized that not only could it be applied to those things, but that it could be applied to software in general. Any type of self-hosted, open source software could be run within the context of this OS in a user-friendly way such that even non-technical people could do it. And once we realized that we had that, then we realized that we might actually be talking about a new computing paradigm, right? One more in line with what the original internet and personal computers were designed to be, which is me and my computer have a private relationship. And if we so choose, we can connect with other computers on a limited and permissioned basis in order to share content and ideas and information. Not the computing model that has emerged over the last couple of decades, which is has come to be a couple very large corporations and governments that are controlling basically every last flow of bits over the wire. And in a benevolent environment, you don't necessarily see the consequences of that. But when the wrong people get into the wrong positions and the incentives are not aligned properly, it can be actually disastrous for society. So we set out to solve this problem. So that's a little bit kind of high level of what we set out to do at Start9 and what we have to a large degree accomplished. We still have a long way to go, which is to, make personal computers private by default, personal by default, such that you are in total control of all of your information. And the only way to do that is to run your own software. So this includes Bitcoin, right? And in fact, Bitcoin was our first service that we put on our marketplace. So when you use one of our devices, you plug it into the wall, you claim it, you tell it who its master is, and from then on, you can install whatever you want on it, including Bitcoin. So on our device, you push a button and you're running a full Bitcoin node. Didn't require you to touch the command line ever, not even during the setup process. The full node is now running on a Raspberry Pi in your home. You can configure your Bitcoin node using a GUI interface. So again, no command line, no .conf files. The GUI configuration is completely validated such that you can't screw it up, right? If you put a value in for a particular attribute and it's outside of, if it's invalid, if it wants a number between 1 and 10 and you put a number that's 12 in, it'll tell you that. It won't let you save it. It won't let you crash your node. And then another major feature that we implemented is a dependency management system, generalized and bidirectional, meaning you can install a layer 3 solution for Bitcoin, say something like Sphinx Chat. Not sure if everyone there knows what Sphinx is, but it's a good example of a layer 3 solution, which is Sphinx Chat is a peer-to-peer kind of chat application that leverages the Lightning Network and in more particularly Lightning Network transactions to pass messages. So it's a chat app that uses Lightning transactions as the data protocol. And Lightning, of course, depends on Bitcoin. So here you have this hierarchy of dependencies. Sphinx needs Lightning, particularly LND, and LND needs Bitcoin. And so here we have a device, a computer, and somebody goes, ooh, I want to run Sphinx. They don't know what Lightning is. They don't know what Bitcoin is. They just want to use Sphinx Chat because they heard it's end-to-end encrypted and uses some cool transfer protocol underneath it. So they install Sphinx Chat. And our system can handle that, right? You install Sphinx and suddenly the operating system tells you, hey, Sphinx, it's installed, good job, but it's not going to work because you're missing LND. And so you say fix, and then it installs LND for you and configures it the way Sphinx requires. And then LND says, well, great, I'm happy because Bitcoin's not here. So fix, and then it installs Bitcoin and configures it the way that LND wants. And so you can start at the bottom going Bitcoin, LND, Sphinx, or you can start at the top going Sphinx, LND, Bitcoin. It doesn't matter which angle you come in from. Our operating system will make sure that at the end of the day, everything is installed and configured and running the way that everything needs it to be in order for it to work for you. For those of you who have ever done this from the command line from scratch on your own, will appreciate that. It is most commonly known as dependency hell from DevOps engineers who do this for a living. And we've turned it into buttons that anyone can push. So, from a GUI configuration system to a generalized dependency management system capable of running Bitcoin, Lightning, layer 3 solutions, and any variety of self-hosted software right from a GUI interface is what we at Start9 have built. And we have built it for the very reasons that were just explained prior to me talking, which is independence, self-sovereignty, trustlessness as computing principles. Why ask somebody else for permission? Why ask somebody else what the truth is when you don't need to do either? That's the world that is emerging now, is that individuals will be able to do everything that they can currently do on their computers and on the internet without a single trusted intermediary, without ever asking permission, and without ever entrusting their data to third parties. There's still a long way to go. This is a movement that not only Start9 is participating in, but others as well. We are fans of all of them, as long as the future is trustless and independent. So with that in mind, we could pause and do a question or two, or I could show the system. I am in a position to actually screen share a working example of a real device that is currently running in my home. It is our current operating system that's in the wild, the one that has been in the wild since, I mean, we've iterated minor versions, but the one that I will show you here has been in the wild since October of 2020, so almost a year, about 10 months. We have a massive, massive update coming out, which is pretty much a new operating system, implementing all the lessons we learned over the last couple of years of how to make it better. So the one I'm about to show you is good. The one that's coming out in the next few weeks is, we think, going to set the standard for sovereign computing into the future.
Nice, really nice. Okay, I think we can go and see the demo and we'll do questions right after.
Okay. Okay, so this is an already set up device. As you can see, there are already a bunch of services installed. So this is the main dashboard, right? So these are all the services that are running on this device. Again, this is not mock data. This is a live demo. It's not something you're generally supposed to do, but I think it'll go just fine. So as you can see, we have Bitcoin here. So if I click on Bitcoin Core, which is currently, running healthily. So here's information about it, right? So I'm running Bitcoin Core 0.21.1. The squiggle one is our own versioning system. It means that we changed some metadata associated with Bitcoin, but this is actually Bitcoin Core running under the hood. It has its own Tor address. It has its own local address. So you can access your services, in this case, Bitcoin, from anywhere in the world using its Tor v3 onion URL. And you can access it from within your home. When you're actually connected to the same LAN, you can communicate directly with your Bitcoin Core node on its .local address, which is really nice because it's really, really fast. It's a very snappy experience. So up here, I could stop Bitcoin if I want to. I could create a backup. I can restore from backup. There's instructions that tell me how to get started. It talks to me about pruning, which is something I should probably get into here. What is the difference? It's a question we get a lot. What is the difference between a full pruned node and a full archival node? So I can talk about that in a minute. We have instructions for how to use various wallets with your embassy, with your Bitcoin node. And then this is what I was talking about before, which is kind of a very unique feature that we offer that I don't think anyone else does, which is that you can configure Bitcoin Core right here in a graphical way. So normally this would require, using Vim or Nano and using SSH to access your bitcoin.conf file and then edit these values, whereas we offer them right here in a GUI interface. So you can see RPC settings. I can enable the RPC interface or not. I can set my username and password for RPC. Advanced settings allow me to set authorization entries so that other people can, grant access to certain apps or individuals. Serialization version is set to segue, RPC timeout, et cetera, right? So, and then at the end, you just hit save and Bitcoin will automatically restart, come back up and be running. And there's no way that I can screw this up because this is all validated. I can revert to defaults at any time. And that's that. So properties is just some kind of basic information about your node. So here's my Tor quick connect URL, LAN quick connect URL, username, password. Here's the current block height, the synced block height. As you can see, I'm totally synced. Sync progress 100%, taproot status locked in, right? So this, taproot start time 0.21.1 offers these. So it tells you how much disk usage I'm using. It's pretty minimal because we're completely pruned by default. So the Bitcoin node on your embassy is set to prune maximally by default. But you will, once we launch 0.3.0, the next operating system version, have the ability, if you want to run a full archival node, even though it's not necessary. Actions are a really neat feature that, again, only our product offers, which is, so this is reindex blockchain. So it rebuilds the block and chain state database starting from Genesis. This is basically resync the entire blockchain, which, you may want to do if you were trying to scoop up old, like if you have a prune node and you wanted to scoop up old transactions, it would take forever. We have actually not trust Coinbase or their wallet, but they do trust you. So what Bitcoin Proxy does is it allows you to give out your Bitcoin Core node to other people without sacrificing any sort of security propositions of it being your node. And the way that that works is Bitcoin Proxy allows you to create users. So if I go into config, right, you can see that I have RPC users, and right, I have this main RPC user Bitcoin. I created one for LND, I created one for C Lightning, I created one for BTC Pay. In other words, through using Bitcoin Proxy, I have granted access to my Bitcoin node to these things. And one of these could say Cousin Joe, right? And Cousin Joe would have his own credentials, right? Username, password, allowed calls. Allowed calls actually allows me to select which things they are allowed to do with my node. And so by default, you don't want to let them do much, right? Because you don't want them to be able to harm your node in any way. So for example, in this case, C Lightning, the only thing C Lightning is allowed to do to my Bitcoin node is the echo command, the estimate smart fee command, right? Get blockchain info. And what's cool about this is that I did not have to go in here and select these. Like, I don't know what all these are, right? I do this for a living and I don't know what all these settings are. This is crazy how much stuff Bitcoin can do. But the person who packaged C Lightning for the embassy knew what calls it needed, the bare minimum calls that it needed, and programmed it into the wrapper repository such that when I install C Lightning says, hey, Matt, I would like to create a user in Bitcoin Proxy with these permissions. Do you agree? And all I had to do was hit yes. And suddenly C Lightning is running on my embassy with a user in Bitcoin Proxy so that it can properly use my Bitcoin Core node. And all I had to do was click yes. And then of course I could go in and edit it and add things and remove things if I really wanted to. So Bitcoin Proxy is a really cool service that allows you to grant permissioned access to your Bitcoin Core node to both apps and individuals who would like that access, and it does so in a secure way. That was what the original proxy did, and what it still does too. But we at Start9 added another feature to Bitcoin Proxy, which is that if any of these things, LND, C Lightning, BTC Pay, if any of them are looking for a block that has been pruned by my Bitcoin Core node, because as I mentioned earlier, my core node is pruned by default on Embassy. And we think pruned nodes are very important for the future because the blockchain will never stop growing. No matter how small the blocks get, or no matter how big we prevent them from getting, it will eventually be infinite size. It grows forever. And so we very strongly believe that pruned nodes will be an important part of the future because while some people may be able to, afford storing terabytes of data, not everyone will be able to. And so Bitcoin Proxy is a way to have your pruned node mimic the functionality of a full archival node by doing the following. If LND asks my Bitcoin node for a block, it's interested in block 500, and my Bitcoin node doesn't have block 500 because it has pruned it, then what Bitcoin proxy does, which is why it's called Bitcoin proxy, because the requests are being proxied through Bitcoin proxy to Bitcoin core. What Bitcoin proxy does is it goes, oh, the node underneath me doesn't have the block that you're looking for. So what it does is it actually reaches out, Bitcoin proxy reaches out over the peer-to-peer network, the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network, asking for block 500. And whoever has it will then serve it up, and then it can fulfill that as well. So Bitcoin proxy, has the ability to sort of superpower your pruned node so that layer 2 and 3 applications can still sort of think that they're running against a full archival node, even though they're not. And that was very important and necessary for us to do in order to have all of these things running against a single pruned node, right? So unlike all the other node solutions out there, Start9's is the only one that is capable of running pruned and also having all of these layer 2 and layer 3 dependencies. I have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-ish, 7 odd services running against the same pruned Bitcoin node on a Raspberry Pi. And it barely touches the performance or storage at all. So this is using a couple gigabytes of data, and running on a 4 gigabyte Raspberry Pi 4. And it barely touches the compute, RAM, or persistent storage. So it's very, very efficient. So let me state one other thing, which I think is unique to our platform, which is that, say, LND here, if I go into config, LND config is massive. You can do so much in here. Like, these are the basic ones. And I can do advanced settings, which is also massive. There's just so much. And all of these things have descriptions of what they are used for. They have defaults. They have, anyway, I won't harp on the GUI configuration. It's just a really cool feature for anyone who's ever tried to do this from the command line. You'll know why this is cool. So what I was going to show you here is that, say, Bitcoin Core, right? It wants to know which Bitcoin Core node to use. And so you can see that it's set to internal. So I have told LND to use the Bitcoin Core node on my embassy. And so all these things, the RPC address, the 0MQ address, the username, and the password are all system defined. I don't have to set these because the system knows what they are. But I could switch this to external, right? And now I go into connection settings, and I can actually tell the Lightning node running on my embassy to connect to a Bitcoin node located on the other side of the world or on another device on my LAN. I just enter the URL here. I can choose between quick connect or manual formats, the public address, RPC username, RPC password, the port, blah, blah, blah. So I could, the settings are extremely granular. You can configure Lightning to do just about anything. And as you can see here, all the way at the root of this, it's telling me Bitcoin Core is invalid because I didn't put these things in that are required. Okay, so that's a good overview. Oh, I haven't even touched the other tabs yet. So here's the services. If I go into Embassy, just to kind of round this out, you can see like what the Embassy can do here. So it tells you about the device. Monitor is going to give me real-time statistics on the Embassy. So you can see it's running temperature, percent used of memory, CPU percent used, disk space percent used, right? So it gives me all these nice little metrics. Logs, these are the actual Embassy logs, not for the service, for any service. I can configure my Embassy, I can give it a name, I can turn on or off auto check for updates from the marketplace. Connect over LAN, so this is a neat little like, like as you can see in the URL bar here, I'm talking to my Embassy on the local area network at its .local address, and that's just cool. And to do that, you have to save the SSL certificate in your browser. Otherwise, Firefox won't trust it. Your embassy serves itself up as its own certificate authority. So when you plug it in and start it up, the device acts as an SSL certificate authority so that you can talk to it from Firefox or Chrome or whatever, and the browser will trust it because it's over HTTPS, which means anyone on your LAN won't be able to sniff the traffic and phish you or anything like that. Wi-Fi setup, you can hook the device up to Wi-Fi, which I do, just because I don't want to keep it right next to my router. So, you can you set up the device and then you add your Wi-Fi credentials for your home network, and then you can go put it in a closet. Like, you could hide the device if you wanted to. In fact, we have people who have set their devices up at other people's houses without those people even knowing. Now, what that might do to their network bandwidth, if you're syncing Bitcoin, maybe they'll notice when their internet bill shows up. But basically, embassies can be, through Wi-Fi, just kind of, you could just put them anywhere. They just need a power cord, and then they'll hook up. So developer options, SSH keys. So if you are more advanced and you want to access your device from the command line, you just add an SSH key, and then you can go to your command line and jump right in. The marketplace, I showed you what a single listing looks like. Here's what, it's not fancy. 030 makes it really fancy, but right now it's just a dumb list of things that you can install. The 030 marketplace has like search features and categories and all that stuff. It gets really cool, but as you can see, it says coming soon, Embassy OS version 2.0, view the update instructions. When it's out, that'll switch to it's available, go ahead and get it. Updates are always free, of course, and software is always free. In fact, we have no means of putting a paywall in front of this stuff. Once you own the device, it's yours forever. Okay, so that's that. Notifications, right? There's none currently, but anything going on with your server or whatever has the ability to notify you and store them here. So that's it for Bitcoin. I know that this is a Bitcoin-oriented meetup, of course, and talk, but I will just say in passing that also running on this device are some very, very cool non-Bitcoin services. Like File Browser is basically Google Drive, except self-hosted, accessible from anywhere in the world over Tor. You can share links, you can add users to your file browser and grant them permissions to specific directories or files. It's basically just a cloud file system where you can store photos and documents and whatever you want. And as with the other things, our dependency management system comes into play here, because if you look at PhotoView is like Google Photos, where you can organize photos into albums and share them with people. It even has facial recognition, so it like automatically puts, my photos or my wife's photos like into specific folders. And so it's using this like advanced facial recognition stuff, except there's no third parties looking at it, so I really like it. Whereas I would never turn that on with like Facebook or Google. And as you can see at the bottom here, PhotoView depends on File Browser, right? So if I was like, oh, I want to run PhotoView and I install it, Embassy OS will say, that's great, but you also need to have File Browser installed because that's where the files are actually stored. File Browser acts as the dependency for multiple services on the Embassy because it is where they're getting the photos from. And again, you don't need to like worry about that. It just works. But it is nice to kind of be able to see what's going on under the hood. Bitwarden is awesome password management, just from a security standpoint, since there's a bunch of Bitcoiners in the room. If there's one thing you can do with your life to make it more secure, it is to use a password manager. There's almost nothing more important than using a password manager for your internet life. And of course, we recommend that it's self-hosted, because otherwise what you're doing is you're taking all the access to everything in your life and shoving it on somebody else's cloud server. And even if it's fully encrypted and they don't actually have your passwords, which they could because you don't know what software they're actually running, they could cut you off at any time. And access to everything, your entire digital life would just go dark because you wouldn't be able to log into anything. So for me and my wife, for instance, we both use Bitwarden. It has Firefox browser extensions. It has Tor browser, and you can, use it as bookmarks, autofill usernames and passwords, and browse the internet with massively complex different passwords for every site. And every one of those passwords is served on a device in your home and served up over Tor. It is as private and sovereign as it gets. Mastodon is a cool, like, Twitter-style social, decentralized, federated social networking protocol where you can run your own server here. Burn After Reading is a way to, like, share secrets that are one-time links, ephemeral links. It's kind of like what Snapchat purported in the early days, except not meant for, like, social rapid fire. It's just, I have a file or a picture or something, and I upload it to my Burn After Reading. It creates a one-time onion URL ephemeral link that I can then share with a single person or with the whole internet. And the first person to view it, the first person to click the link and know the password, because I can password encrypt the content. So the first person to click the link and know the password will be able to view, save, download the content, whatever, and then it burns forever, provably because it's on a device in your home. So if you want to share, like, sensitive financial information or something like that, and you want to do it in a one-time way, Burn After Reading is arguably the most sovereign, secure, private way that has ever existed to do that, because it's all done over Tor, it's all self-hosted, it's all encrypted end to end. And it uses ephemeral links so that once it's viewed, it's gone forever. And then the last one I'll mention here is potentially the biggest one that we have non-Bitcoin wise, which is Matrix. And Matrix is a very large, awesome, featureful, federated messaging protocol where, everyone can run their own server. You don't have to. You could Uncle Jim this, where other people could create accounts on your Matrix server, and then it's just chat. It's like Slack meets Telegram, except totally self-hosted, end-to-end encrypted, and all over Tor. We actually had to add Tor to the Matrix protocol to make this work. The Start9 team did. And it works, and it's great. Okay, that was a lot. I'm done.
Right, a round of applause for Matt.
Let me stop sharing. Okay.
Thanks, Matt, that was very good. So we're gonna just go over the crowd to see if anybody has questions.
Hi, Matt.
Hey there.
I had no idea about Start9, and I'm amazed. So congrats for that. It's really great. Really, I'm amazed at what I've just seen. And my question for you is, well, first it's a quick one. Can you connect different wallets with Embassy for Bitcoin?
Yes. Any wallet, and admittedly they are few, which is unfortunate. Any wallet that is capable of connecting to a remote Bitcoin node over RPC, over Tor, will work against your Embassy Bitcoin node. Currently that list is Spectre, fully noded, and very soon, hopefully, because we have a PR in to fix the upstream dependency issue, hopefully Sparrow. And the reason why those are the only ones that work today is because they have to be able to connect directly to your Bitcoin RPC interface and over Tor. And those are two requirements that not many wallets support. Most wallets require some sort of wrapper server running, like BWT or Electrum Personal Server or Electrum. And they're designed to hit those backends. And those things work much better with an archival node. The pruned node aspect of Embassy currently has this limitation in that BWT and EPS, Electrum Personal Server, will absolutely run against a pruned node. The problem is that they will only have data available to them that for blocks that came in after you connected to the pruned node. So what would happen is it would blow up our support channel because people would install EPS and then they'd plug in their existing XPub to EPS and they'd go, why aren't my funds showing up? And our response would be because you're running a pruned node and you'd have to resync from Genesis and then there goes a week of their life. So we have held off, even though we could have added those things and dramatically increased the number of wallets that are available, we held off until we offered full archival support because we knew that it would be more feasible from a support and messaging documentation standpoint.
All right, thank you. And my other question for you is, as far as the use case of Embassy, or one of the use cases actually of being an operating system or sovereign computing, if I'm an individual or an entity or user in particular, and I need, there are starting to be options out there, and how do you say, how do you think that Start9 se démarquer is different from others, like for example Umbrel, which is obviously very popular and perhaps similar, especially with the latest update? How's Start9 competing with that, or is that perhaps not the goal even to compete, but just to offer something to users?
Umbrel and Start9, as well as some of the others, but probably to a lesser degree, are on similar tracks. We have taken very, very different approaches, and we think it's important that people understand the differences and trade-offs. And so we will be publishing something soon once we release 030, because it's actually kind of hard for us to even talk about our system right now because it is so different in 030 that we don't even want to put out new documentation right now because it'll be, it'll be old in a couple of weeks. So, but here's the overarching differences. Things like Umbrel and MyNode and Raspberry Blitz and others. The way that I like to describe them, and this is with full respect, I love what they do. I think it's a fantastic product. Is it's like having a really technical friend. And you want to do all these things, right? You say, I want to run a Bitcoin node, I want to run a Lightning node, I want to run a Bitwarden server, and I don't know how to do any of it. I'm not good on the command line, et cetera. And your really technical friend says, I'll come over. I'll take care of this for you. And they come over and you already have the materials, right? You bought the Pi, you bought everything, and they open it up and they start installing things from the command line. They go through and they do all the heavy lifting, they install everything, and now everything is running on your Raspberry Pi. And they've even gone through the trouble of giving you Tor addresses for each of these things so that you can use them. And then it's running, it's sitting in the corner of your room, and then they're like, all right, see ya. And that's fine, but you don't know what's happening, and you are not capable necessarily, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't have had to invite them over in the first place, of making any kind of meaningful changes to these things. So if you wanted to configure Bitcoin, for instance, you're going to call your friend and they're going to say, oh, go open your terminal app on your Mac, SSH in, navigate cd to bitcoin.conf. By the way, you have to Docker exec first, so go download that stuff and do, okay, and then cd into bitcoin.conf, nano, vim, open it up, change these things, and make sure you don't mistype anything, because if you do, Bitcoin Core will crash. So configuration, right, is something that is sort of not supported in a graphical user interface kind of a way. Secondly, and perhaps most importantly, is modularity. The dependency management system that I explained earlier is generalized and bidirectional. It means that anything at any layer can be installed onto Embassy, and Embassy will know how to make it work. So take Umbral, for example, probably the most advanced of the alternative solutions. Bitcoin Core is baked in, I believe. I know that they have talked about changing this, but it is sort of part of the operating system, right? It was built with that in mind. And so when you install Lightning, LND, on Umbral, it just expects there to be a Bitcoin node running on your device, which means it has to be, right? It cannot handle the situation where LND is installed, but Bitcoin is not. Meaning you couldn't then point your LND node to an alternative Bitcoin node, right? It's what in the engineering world is known as fragile. The system works so long as you don't want to customize it in any meaningful way. It just works as is. But then things that even aren't the user's decision come about, like updates happen, right? Where LND will come out with some new version that requires a new version of Bitcoin. And so what you get into is this situation where updates have to be atomic. So take like something like MyNodeBTC. When you update MyNodeBTC, it comes with all the services. It's an all or nothing sort of bundled approach because of this fragility that I'm talking about. These things are not a la carte. It's like you go to a restaurant, you're just like, give me the meal, and they just bring the meal. You do not get to pick and choose which pieces of the meal you actually want. And so that might not be the most important thing today, but we know where this is going. And we know that it is going to be extremely important when the dependency graph gets more complicated into the future, when natural discrepancies and breakages happen, when advanced configuration is not only desired, but potentially necessary, our system will be able to handle that seamlessly. It was designed for it from scratch. And that's probably the two biggest highlights. But the other things that I showed you, like the LAN configuration from the GUI, connecting over Wi-Fi from the GUI, and 030 implements a whole bunch of new things, which I won't give away too much of right here, but one of the big ones is health checks, right? So if you go look at our support channel or the Umbral support channel or the MyNodeBTC support channel, you'll often see a bunch of very opaque issues like, well, it's running, but I can't reach it. Or it seems to be stuck at some block height or another. Well, our new operating system 030 implements health checks, where each service defines for itself what constitutes health. So Bitcoin will say, am I healthy right now? And it knows whether or not it's healthy because Embassy OS, the operating system, is performing continuous health checks against Bitcoin, the same checks that Bitcoin told it to perform. And if any of them ever fail, you, the user, get notified immediately. It says, Bitcoin health check number 3 is failing. Here's the check. Here's why it's failing. Here's what you can do to fix it. And usually it's push this button, which will then execute some predefined action, which actions I showed you earlier are bundled commands represented as buttons. And it'll just fix it. And then everything will work again. And that is, it's not only not there in the other systems, but I know, because we just built it, what it would take for them to get it there. And it's almost a non-starter because those systems are designed as this bundled, one-size-fits-all, fragile system that does work, by the way. Again, it's a good product. It's just not what we're building. We are building a generalized, scalable, fully featured operating system capable of accommodating any variety and any combination of self-hosted open source software that grandma can run. That is our ultimate goal. It is an extremely ambitious goal. And the goals of, I think, the other projects in the place are to allow you to plug and play Bitcoin services. And more recently, Umbrel took a step in our direction, I think probably because of us, even though they didn't say so, because we've been there for a year. We've been offering those things for a year. And they took a step in our direction, I think because they realized that this is the end game. Sovereign computing is the name of the game, not run your own Bitcoin node. Run your own Bitcoin node is extremely important, but once you take that red pill, it leads to sovereign computing in general.
Does it support other cryptos? Does it support
Anything else?
other-
If somebody's talking, I cannot hear you.
Does it support other cryptos?
No, not yet. So the way that Embassy is designed, and in accordance with our own philosophy as individuals and as a company, sovereignty matters. We would never presume to tell somebody what they can and cannot run with their computer. We will be very careful to make recommendations, to stake our reputation on saying what we think people should and should not do. We've been very open about that with Bitcoin. We think that you should do it, and we think you should run Lightning, and we're very confident about that. But we know that people out there want to run other things too, whether we like them or not, whether we think they're crap or not. And here's how we've decided to do that. So the reason that there are currently no other base layer or second layer blockchain networks running on the Embassy is because we do not yet have an adequately designed marketplace to make it clear to people the risks that they are taking if they choose to go those routes. So there will be sections of the marketplace that are like altcoin maybe. And if you go there, there's going to be some special messaging that's like, this is the community corner of the marketplace. People have packaged this up. We do not necessarily review it or vouch for it, and you could absolutely be installing malware, and you could absolutely be installing something that could lose you money, et cetera, et cetera. But it's your computer, so do what you want. And if there's something that we really don't appreciate, then we will not let it onto our marketplace. It is our marketplace. It is centralized. It is branded, and it is the default marketplace where people can go to download things that Start9 has at least deemed safe, right? Like, it's not malware. We've verified that it's actual code that's running based on something that's been running for a long time, has been peer reviewed, et cetera. So we will gatekeep our marketplace. But as a protection against ourselves, which we do at every corner, you can, as a user, seamlessly connect to an alternative marketplace. So anyone can run an Embassy marketplace, which is full of services that can be one-click installed, downloaded, and run on an Embassy. So if you don't like our marketplace and the kind of safety and trust that you have in us to vet these things, then connect to your friend's marketplace who's shilling whatever they want. So, it's hard to talk details about how this is going to evolve, but I know for sure that in the community section of our marketplace, there will be some alternative options for cryptocurrency and blockchain networks. And I can say for certain that most we won't even let into the community section, that if you want to run them, you will need to either create your own marketplace or connect to the marketplace that somebody else has created and is willing to do that, because we need to be very careful about the things that we promote and represent.
I was going to ask you, is there a possibility to run your own email server?
Yeah. That was one of the first ones that we wanted to do and spent some time looking into. Email is like the black sheep of all self-hosted services. It is awful. It predates the internet. It is a crap protocol. It is incredibly centralized. There's the whole cabal of trusted email servers. And at the end of the day, if you send an email to somebody from a non-trusted server, it goes to spam. And oftentimes we found it doesn't even make it to spam. It just doesn't show up. It just gets lost in the void. And secondly, there is a way to configure an email server to not do that, but everything on Embassy by default runs over Tor. So running your own email server over Tor that actually works and doesn't cause more frustration than benefits is almost impossible. So we have decided to withhold support for a personal email server until we implement ClearNet support for the Embassy in general. So right now, you can connect to your Embassy over Tor from anywhere in the world or over LAN.local while you're connected to the same network. But next year, we will be implementing generalized ClearNet support so that you will be able to connect to your Embassy from anywhere in the world over, joe.net. Your website will then link to your Embassy and you can visit it over a normal ClearNet site. That inherently involves, some of the more trusted internet. There's the DNS servers and all that, but we will make the trade-offs very, very clear. In most cases, it's not going to be a big privacy or sovereignty risk or sacrifice to do this. And it will be very, very helpful, not only for performance reasons, because Tor can be a bit slow, but also for things like email. Email will be very straightforward to implement once your Embassy has an actual ClearNet domain. So next year, 2022, we'll have email and ClearNet.
Great. Another question?
I just checked in the documentation for the DIY of Embassy OS regarding the 0.3 version. It's saying it will require hardware updates. I was wondering if you could maybe tell us about what that means.
Yep. So there's a saying in startups, which is, ship and iterate, move fast and break things. Some of these things don't apply as much when you're dealing with trustware, things that are high security and have real risks. But ship and iterate still kind of works. And so we chose, still up for debate whether this was a mistake or not on our part, we chose to ship Embassy without an external hard drive. We shipped it with a 128 gigabyte high endurance micro SD card so that both the operating system, Embassy OS, and all of the services and all of the data of both Embassy OS and the services are running off of this micro SD card that's plugged directly into the Pi. And that's one of the reasons why we only support a pruned node, because you can't even fit a full archival node onto 128 gigabytes and still have room, of course, for anything else. Even the blockchain itself wouldn't even fit, let alone everything else. And what this did, in a way, which is why I still stand by the decision, was it forced us to create an extremely efficient system. It's like Bitcoin having 1 megabyte blocks, right? Rather than brute forcing the block size larger and larger, it actually forced the Bitcoin core devs to get more and more efficient with the space that they had. And we had a very similar experience, which is why we can run 8 services against a single pruned node and nobody else can. It's because we got really good at building this stuff. However, running what we are running, especially Lightning, on a micro SD card over time carries risk, because failure of the card can result in closure of channels and potentially even loss of funds. So they will not fail anytime soon. There is no immediate risk to anyone in the world who's running these. We've tested them and we believe that the lifespan of these micro SDs is at least 5 years, given the amount that we're using them. But we also recognize that we needed to move towards a SSD, external SSD approach to the ephemeral data. And so in 0.3.0, the operating system, Embassy OS, will run off of the micro SD card as a read-only piece of software. The operating system runs on the micro SD, and all of the volatile data for both Embassy and every service will be running off of a SSD that you plug into the USB 3 port. And so for existing Embassy users, we've created a very seamless migration where they will be able to either, they need to get an SSD. So you can go to your hardware store and buy one, or we, for existing Embassy owners, sell what we call an upgrade kit, and we sell it at cost, and we do free shipping to US customers. So we're actually losing money on this because we wanted to do right by our existing customers. So we sell an upgrade kit that is plug and play. It'll actually come pre-flashed with 030 on the micro SD card, and you'll plug it in and you'll do this and you'll click a button, and all of your data will be transferred from the old SD card to the external drive, and then Embassy OS will be running off of the micro SD, and you'll be up and running in no time. For new customers or new build from source users, because nothing requires you to do business with us to have an Embassy up and running fully, right? You can compile the hardware yourself, you can compile the software yourself, install it, never even talk to us, and you'll be running one of these devices just fine. It's not free. You still have to buy hardware. You still have to put in the time and energy, and those are costs, but it's a different avenue if you don't want to deal directly with us. For new customers and new people building from source, you won't have to do that migration. You'll just start from the get-go with an external SSD, and everything will just work. But we are like right in the middle of that transition right now. So people who are approaching us today saying, hey, I want to build from source and build my own thing, and how do I do? And we're like, just wait 2 weeks till 030 is ready, and then do it. And there won't be any questions. It'll be totally clear. Also, one perk is that the current Embassy OS uses 3 primary technologies. The front end, the graphical user interface, right, is a web app served on the web, and it's written in TypeScript, CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. So very traditional there. But the back end of Embassy OS is split sort of equally between Haskell and Rust currently. And for anyone who knows what Haskell is, it's sort of notorious for being really difficult to work with from a DevOps perspective. Like, it requires a lot of heavy software running, and so people who have been trying to build from source have had some problems with getting the Haskell dependencies installed so that they can complete the build with success. 030 removes Haskell from the code base. We actually rewrote the entire Haskell module in Rust. So the entire backend is now written in Rust. And so the build from source guide is about to get a lot easier. And that was one of the main reasons that we did that, was so that people could more easily get an Embassy up and running without buying it from us.
Perfect. Thanks for the answer. Anybody got a last question? Okay, who's the last question? Thank you.
The name of the embassy that you guys chose, was there some kind of philosophy behind it? Because we all know what an embassy is, and I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. That's why. It's because it's what an embassy is. It's a sovereign territory in somebody else's land. And so what we viewed this as is your territory in the land of the internet. And it is sovereign. You don't ask anyone for permission, you make your own rules, and yet you are operating on the internet. We are, in a way, hijacking the infrastructure of the current internet to create a parallel system that cannot be co-opted or stopped by the system it's riding on. And so in a way, we saw it like an embassy. It's a lot of people think that the embassy is a cloaking device for the internet. Their first thought is, how can I use this to be more private online? They think of it almost like a VPN, right? Where it's like, I go around the internet and this thing helps me stay safe and private. Like I go to google.com, but I'm on google.com in a better way because I'm using Embassy. And that is not true. That is completely not what this device is. This device is an alternative internet. You do not use your Embassy to browse the ClearNet, to browse the normal internet. You use your Embassy as a destination in itself. So rather than going to dropbox.com and storing your files, you go to blah, 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 .onion, which is your private, personal, never before seen or heard of website that's being served up as a Tor v3 hidden service, more colloquially known as a darknet website that you can access from anywhere in the world with impunity. So the Embassy is not a cloaking device, it is a destination. I know some of my answers have been very long-winded, so I apologize if they've been too long-winded, but I obviously enjoy talking about this.
No, it's really interesting, and you're very good at explaining it. And I was going to ask you, like, do you guys have some plans in the future? Because I mean, like, we've heard like the Raspberry is kind of like limited in its processing power, and you guys have a lot of stuff running on it. So are you guys going to go to like something a little bit more rugged in the near future?
So again, I'll give a medium-winded answer. The original Embassy OS, that which is running right now, what I just showed you, is a fork of Raspbian. Raspbian is a fork of Linux designed for the Raspberry Pi. Now there's Raspberry Pi OS and then there's Raspbian. Raspbian was lighter, which is why we chose it. It didn't have as much stuff. And at first we actually had struggled with calling ourselves OS developers. We were like, it's Raspbian, and then we added some things. It's not Raspbian anymore. Embassy OS is a whole new thing, and we are totally confident in saying that now. However, it's very bespoke to the Pi, right? You can't run Embassy OS on anything other than a Pi today, unless you are creating a virtual system, which is possible, but then that has its own problems. So 0.3.0 switches to Ubuntu, which means we have just kicked the door open for Embassy OS to run on just about anything. And that's going to be awesome. So and that's why we did it, was to address your question there, was to make sure that we were not bound to the Pi, not just for performance reasons though, because the Pi is actually, like the Pi 4 8 gigabyte is a hell of a machine. It's a really powerful device. And, I just showed you on my screen, I think I'm running 15 services in parallel, including Bitcoin, which is a very hungry boy. And I'm using like 30% of all the resources, basically, from compute to RAM. I was only using like 8% of disk. I mean, and that's on a 128 gig card. Obviously, it has nothing to do with the Pi, but like, most people aren't going to run more than 25, 30 services. Like there's only so much, you'll have your messaging app and your data apps and this, and the Pi is going to be fine, at least as a introductory device, like a lower end device, probably forever. But we do have power users. We have the people that are going to want to run like Bitcoin and Monero and Zcash all in parallel, all at the same time. And it's like, yeah, of course that's not going to run on a Pi. So 0.3.0 opens the door for alternative hardware solutions.
Right. Okay, one last question, but that's it after that.
Yeah, going back to the privacy, does it protect your privacy when you are going on any application on your computer or when you're surfing any web page? Can it be trackable, or it actually keeps you private?
So this goes back to what I was talking about a couple minutes ago with, if you use your computer and you go to facebook.com, the embassy can't help you. Nobody can help you. You could use a VPN right? But even the VPNs are debatable as to, like, because if they're known and they too are compromised, then yes, use a VPN, but it's like you don't go to the back alley, right? It's like you can only, protect yourself so much. If you go to a dangerous place, you have to deal with those risks. Now, there are things that we could install on the embassy, such as Pi-hole, for instance. So Pi-hole is a really cool service that does network ad blocking for your home. So you can install Pi-hole on the embassy. It's not on there now, but it will be very soon. And it will sort of protect your home and your children from seeing excessive advertisements and, bad material and whatnot. But again, this is sort of like, these are services that the embassy can run that can sort of help you. And we're going to put a VPN on the embassy too. So you could act as the centralized VPN for all of your people in your life, and they could proxy all the traffic through you, making you a service provider in a VPN, which will be really cool for a lot of people. So yes, there are things that the embassy can do to help you in these scenarios, but the main intent here is to create an alternative internet. The main intent is to say, don't go to facebook.com. Go to blah, 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 mastodon.onion. And instead of using a centralized ClearNet spyware social media site, go use the decentralized, federated, encrypted, censorship-resistant private social media network. And that's a tall order because nobody's there, right? So social media is going to be probably like the last domino to fall, because as Facebook and MySpace proved, people only want to be where other people are. So social media is going to come last. There isn't going to be some sort of like breakthrough decentralized social media that, actually gives Facebook and Twitter a run for their money for many years. But infrastructure comes first. In order for anything like that to ever succeed, you first have to be able to run it in a sovereign way, which is what we're building. So short answer is no. That's not what Embassy is designed for. Embassy is designed to give you places to go that are inherently private, not to keep you private in dirty places.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Another round of applause for Matt. Very interesting, all of this. Thank you, Matt. So,
all right.
It was great having you.
Okay, thank you. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye. All right, before we finish this presentation, I'm just going to show my screen again so that I can talk about what's happening in the evening tonight. So first of all, we're going to the Lord William Pub tonight, 255 Rue des Seigneurs. Here's a way to go from here till there in Metro. You take the Orange Line, Orange Metro to Georges Vanier, and then you walk about 12 minutes south. You can also take an Uber. What time we're going to be there? 7, I think, is safe to say? 5? Okay, so it starts right away. So we'll be on our way. I guess I'm going to be there 5:30. But this is the way to go. You can always talk to us to figure out to go together. So this is what we're doing tonight, Lord William Pub, 265 Rue des Seigneurs. But I also want to talk about the event that's happening in 2 days. Thursday night, we're going to an Indian restaurant called Gandhi, which is probably the best Indian restaurant there is in Montreal. So buy your ticket on this link. You go on Verify BTC Twitter account to get your ticket. It's $70, including taxes and tip, excluding drinks. But it's a feast. It's a 5-course meal. It's in Old Port. We're going there at 7 p.m. on Thursday, the 19th. So buy it on Twitter. It's going to send you to a link on Gumroad where you'll be able to buy it with your credit card. And you can buy multiple tickets for your friends. So yeah, we'll just go to the Lord William Pub. And for everyone watching the live stream, thank you for participating. We'll be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time once again for the Lightning Day. Lightning Day tomorrow. We're gonna have me starting just with some basic Lightning concepts, then switching over to a story from Bitcoin Beach to a real use case of Lightning. Then we're gonna go to lunch, come back. We're gonna be with Etienne from Bull Bitcoin, also known as Keksky. He's gonna present, we're gonna be with Paul from Sphinx first, and then we're gonna be with Etienne from Bull Bitcoin. Paul's gonna present Sphinx and Stack Work, which are like Lightning applications, and Etienne's gonna present Ciphernote and Lightning URL, which are like development protocols to fix some Lightning challenges that there are. So thank you everybody, and see you all tomorrow.
You tell me that you love me. 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 something you don't know. I feel you're here with me. I need to show you all. 'Cause you're beautiful, you're beautiful with me. Give you everything, it's the only thing I need. I won't tell you something you don't know. I feel you're here with me. I need to show you all. 'Cause you're beautiful with me. Give you everything, it's the only thing I need. Cause you're beautiful with me. Give you everything, it's the only thing I need. Cause you're beautiful with me. Give you everything, it's the only thing I need. Close your eyes. Close your eyes.
Don't overthink things, baby, 'cause I know that you do. You've been a stranger lately, and I know that's not you. Easy come, easy go, no need to fight about it. Easy come, easy go, no stress, I'm good without it. Easy come, easy go, let's keep it fun and simple. Easy come, easy go.
Sad. 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 Saw your face, I couldn't find the words I meant to say. Stuck inside myself and broken down in every single way.